So hi everybody. So today I'm on the plane to nowhere. And I've met like few people that I know already and I really like. So let me introduce you to them. So the first one is June O, Senior Regional Director at MediaMath. Second one is like Diogo Andrade, Head of Automation to Spotify. And my last mate is Hemant Memon, performance lead at denstu. And so we decided to talk today and to talk about the transparency, the key to growth in the APAC programmatic market. So in order to start, first I will ask the same question to everybody, because today we are like a publisher, a SSP, a DSP, and an agency. And so I will ask the same question to everybody. What is the transparency for you? So what is the transparency for a publisher, for SSP, for a DSP, and for an agency? And so let's start with Diogo. Diogo, for you, what is the transparency for a publisher, and what do you do on a day-to-day basis to handle transparency?
Hi, first of all, thank you for the invitation to be part of this flight, Kevin. Pleasure. And hi, everyone else. Yes, so to clarify, my role at Spotify is obviously helping our ad sales team moving into a world of programmatic, so programmatic sales, essentially. So I'm representing Spotify, obviously, from that side as a platform and as a publisher. My experience has been working with publishers for over 13, 14 years. So I kind of went through the evolution of how publishers look at their data, look at their inventory, and obviously the recent conversations around transparency, which is something that I think should interest all publishers. A few things that I can share from again, what I went through and other people that I speak to at the industry that are in the same position that I am. One first thing is to understand which users come into your platform, correct? So if you're a publisher, you need to understand what the level of bot traffic or invalid traffic do you have in your own platform. This is important because obviously as publishers, we depend on advertising, and advertising dollars will come if you have real users consuming your content. So I think that's a number one factor or thing that I would look for when I think of transparency for a publisher. The other one is actually knowing which brands are buying your inventory. So again, with the rise of programmatic and starting to become a bit more serious and not just remnant inventory for publishers, we're actually monetizing all our inventory via programmatic channels. It's becoming more and more important to understand which brands are actually buying your inventory. Obviously, this is a process, and it's obviously a joint effort with SSP partners, but to understand who exactly is buying ads on your platform. I think that's another level of transparency that should be super important for publishers. I think the other ones are more correlated to performance, in my opinion. And the last one is, I think, something that is could be a topic of interest for all of us to discuss. So I think around performance is important. I think publishers should care if their ads perform. And I think a level of transparency also is, words and measurement terms such as viewability. And I think publishers need to understand how their ads perform, because again, it's super important that they can convey the right message to partners, agencies, DSPs, and brands. So I think that performance level is quite important. The last one has to do with revenue. So I think this is a big topic for publishers. It's not anything new or a taboo. It's very well known in the programmatic space that there are hidden fees, and there are a lot of things happening between the price that a brand pays and the revenue that a publisher will see. And I think this is another thing that should be included in transparency for a publisher, is what is your net revenue, and is that a fair amount of revenue for the quality of the inventory, the performance that inventory has, and obviously the quality of the data and the context that you're placing your ads in. So yeah, that in a very short sentence is what I believe transparency is for publishers.
Interesting. And so for the fees part, so what do you do about it? I mean, like, how do you check that the revenue spent by the advertiser is directly coming to you and that you are not losing anything?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's a process. We're becoming a lot better at it, I think, as an industry. Not necessarily, I would say this region is the best at it, but we're on a good path to it. I think it starts with asking questions, you know, it's asking questions, having the right relationships, you know, again, relying quite heavily on your SSP partners, knowing who they are and trusting them as well, that they will help publishers throughout that journey, that they know and they want to get the best buck for their dollars. And I think that's clear. No, it's in the best interest of an SSP, the same way obviously that they're representing the publisher's interest. But I think that it's just having a transparent conversation. It's happening more and more, I can see, but you can see publishers reaching out to the agency planning teams and directly even to brands to just say, hey, wait, how much are you actually paying for what I'm seeing? And that level of transparency will help everyone. But that's all I think publishers can do. Work with SSPs and have a good and open relationship with all parties on the buy side.
Okay, great, interesting. So I will be the second one to talk about it. So we can go like publisher, SSP, DSP, and agency, and we go through the chain. So what is transparency for SSP? So what is interesting by being SSP is that like we are the tech platform in the middle of the publisher on the agency on the buyer side. And so first it will be to pass the good information from the sell side to the buy side, of course. So being transparent is to get the information, pass it as it is, not transforming it, and also keeping the data for the publisher, of course. Second one will be to maximize the revenue for the publishers, but also maximize the performances for the buyers. So this is kind of what you are talking about. So trying to be transparent and to do the best for both the sell side and the buy side. And so at the end, yeah, this is about passing the good data, passing the good inventory, so no fraudulent inventory, not having any hiding fees, so only adding value on the chain. So I mean, like not just being here to be here, but like adding value for both the supply side and the buy side, and of course working with all the other partners in order to improve the ecosystem. So my meaning about it is like transparency is also to work all together about it, because yeah, the chain, we have like a lot of people involved, a lot of companies involved on the programmatic chain. So if you just want to be transparent by yourself, but not pitching the transparency to everybody, I don't think that you could be transparent actually, because the chain, the entire chain needs to be transparent. So on the day-to-day basis, what we do as a SSP, so there is a lot of things, of course, but this is to check fraud, and of course to only onboard the good supply. So to be sure, to be transparent about the supply that we provide to the buy side. It's about checking also the quality ads, so on the other side, and to be sure that the partners who are working on the buyer side are good partners and are transparent with us, so we can deliver the good ads also to the publishers. And at the end, yeah, this is to keep a good and transparent relationship with everybody, so we can all move forward together on this, and so we don't have a bottleneck in the middle that can destroy the entire value in the chain. So this is it for the SSP. So now let's ask the question to the DSP side, to June. So June, can you let us know what is transparency for a DSP?
Yeah, of course. And thanks for having me on board. And I'm really glad that you guys went before me, because Diogo summarized, different aspects of transparency so well. And Kevin, what you mentioned, transparency is not something that just one partner can do and then, it just checks the box. It's not like that, where all of us in the ecosystem have to work together to actually have transparency across the board throughout the entire supply chain. So it is really important, and this conversation is really meaningful. In a way, maybe to add to what you guys have already said, for DSPs, we're a connector in the supply chain. So making sure that we connect all the supply side, or I guess sell side partners, and also the buy side partners, whether it is Hemant, agency and brand partners. You know, and transparency in a way for us is a common language that we want to use so that there is a trust in this, you know, broader working relationship. You know, for maybe to start with the sell side, you know, you guys mentioned, you know, optimizing to, let's say, publisher yields, but also sharing data with you, being transparent with you on what our buyers are looking for. It can be performance data. It can be, you know, just in terms of business, you know, partnerships, it could be certain aspects that they need from you. So sharing all of that with you so that you have, you know, information to improve either your performance or how you operate to get, you know, more business from the buy side. And then for the buyers, it's, you know, they need to know where their investment is going. They have to have confidence in, you know, where, you know, who they're buying, what audiences that they're actually purchasing, and where, and making sure that we're delivering quality and showing that all. And of course, you know, fee, part of this is fee transparency and performance transparency. Giving them all in the platform is important, because that gives them confidence to, you know, spend more with us.
Interesting. I have nothing to add. So, Hemant, what about agency side?
All right. First of all, thank you for having me on board. I didn't expect
Welcome.
restrictions. But anyway, so I think as an agency, we sit in a very unique position, you know, because we have visibility across what happens in the supply side and, you know, what the advertisers are demanding, even though, of course, you know, we are more closer to the demand side, but we definitely have relationships across the board, right? Like that's how we put it ourselves. So what I've come to learn of is that transparency, essentially, for me at least, is that it's in terms of the dollar flow, right? So if you can justify how that dollar is being maximized, or if you can measure that dollar, you will essentially be transparent across the board. Of course, data has a lot to do with, you know, giving us visibility into what happens into every element across the supply chain. But essentially, I'll probably categorize, you know, the definition into two folds. So the first is, of course, the supply chain, which is, you know, the burning issue right now, right, in this ecosystem. Essentially, the supply chain transparency ensures that as advertisers, you know, or as agencies, we are maximizing the cost efficiencies across our campaigns, right? So basically delivering more return on ad spends, and, you know, also ensuring that we are reaching out to the right people and actual humans, and not, you know, bot traffic, right? And that's what Diogo also said. It's really important for publishers also to monitor that, right? And therefore, we are also trying to kind of work with publishers directly to ensure that we are not, you know, being the victims of bot traffic, right? The second is transparency for brands. So as an agency, of course, you know, we serve a lot of brands. So what we've done is that, and I'm sure you've seen this across agency holding groups, essentially they've dissolved all their trading desks or trading desk models, right? Majority of them have. I won't go into details, but essentially the dissolution of trading desk models essentially is, you know, a cornerstone in a step towards transparency. That's how I see it, because a lot of advertisers are also being crunched, you know, with their marketing budgets, and therefore they're also demanding more and more visibility and, you know, more efficiencies in what they spend with us. And of course, as agencies, agencies are also now being, you know, really hammered, essentially, you know, to operate on like fully disclosed models. So yeah, so I mean, transparency, of course, is, you know, again, like June and, you know, you and probably Diogo also said, it's a matter of working together, you know, with the entire ecosystem. If I really feel this, that if, you know, the dollar flow, the dollar is not reaching from the buyer to the supplier, essentially it just threatens the existence of the entire ecosystem.
Okay, so I really love what you say about like transparency. It's about maximizing the ROI, which means like inside, if you want to maximize the ROI inside, you need to improve a lot of things. So it can be about the data, it can be about the traffic, it can be about the fees. And so this is all what we were talking about before, about what is transparency for us. And actually, yeah, you're right. It's like combining, like if you want to optimize the ROI on the advertiser side, then you need to act on each of the points that we talked about before in order to be more transparent. And so then at the end, you will get like more performances regarding the budget that you can spend.
Yeah, it's like a, I would say it's a chain reaction, right? So if as an agency I can deliver more for the advertiser, or if as a publisher you can deliver more for the advertisers, you'll get more money, right? As an agency, if I can deliver, advertisers or the marketing teams within the brands can pull in more budgets from different channels. So it's like it's a chain reaction. So if if I know that Spotify is the best publisher to place my ad on as an advertiser and gets me the most ROI, definitely, why not? And then if MediaMath essentially offers a lot of transparency solutions, and why not? So it's like a supply, it's a chain reaction essentially. That's how I'll probably put it.
Yeah, got it. Okay, awesome. Someone want to add something about this?
Guys, just a quick pause. I actually hear the airplane noise. Is it just me? There's like a faint like.
It's probably my laptop.
Sorry, never mind.
Okay. So let's move forward. Yeah, we are in the plane. Sometimes there is some turbulences, or I don't know, but this is the game. Okay, so we'll ask now an open question, and so you can all answer and discuss about it. So the question is, why is transparency important, and how can it help the programmatic growth in APAC? So who wants to answer this to start, at least?
I don't mind going first. Yeah, you want to go?
Go ahead, Diogo. Go ahead.
Ladies first, please.
Thank you. Maybe to add, build on what Hemant said earlier. Before transparency really was a thing, there weren't as many levers for trading desks, for example, to be able to really drill down to maybe not even at the URL level. Before, the transparency didn't exist at that level. Right now a lot of people have, but now they can even go down further, path level or bid level, and they can optimize. So in terms of improving performance, all these buyers have more levers to improve their ROI. So transparency is already delivering value in terms of cost efficiency, and even beyond that, getting closer to the goal. And for the publisher side as well, as a DSP, we try to make more information available for SSPs to take that data, to take what advertisers want from SSPs, from publishers, so that they can use that data, leverage that data to improve products or optimize on their end, and also see which advertisers are spending where, so that they're not just looking at percentage yield to just optimize their inventory, but also paying attention to performance or perhaps quality of the inventory. So in return, that benefits the advertiser, the buyers. So overall, then we can say, hey, transparency is putting us all on the same page. Now our goals are aligned, so all of us are working toward the same goal. And as an industry, we advance. We're improving our technology, we're improving how we are working together, and we're working towards the same goal. That goal alignment is really important.
Someone want to add something on it?
I can add. I quite like what you said, June, especially on the ROI of transparency. I think that should be by itself a reason for some markets that are a bit behind in utilizing some of the measurement partners or asking the right questions, I think, to move into this direction in APAC. I also think, and was one of the things I thought when you asked this question and used APAC, I think it's quite hard to define APAC as one region. There are different markets and different levels of maturity. So you almost have like 2-3 tiers of maturity. But for the ones with low maturity, I think it also comes with time. No, like digital spends are not at the same level that they are in Europe or let's say in Australia, which is a tier 1 market in our region. I think once digital spends increase, and I think this will be part of that journey, I think, and to finalize kind of that thought, I really think the buck starts with marketers. I think as marketing teams in this region start to be equipped with the right information and start asking the right questions from their agency partners, and therefore then it trickles down into that chain that you guys mentioned a couple of times, it will just happen that transparency becomes the model of trading in our markets as well. You know, like Southeast Asia would zoom in because obviously is probably the region that needs more development in this particular topic. But again, I think, I'm not sure if I'm wrong, and I think Hemant would be the best position to speak about this, but the brands I speak to, either they're global brands and they have global mandates and therefore everyone works towards those global mandates, or they're regional or local brands that really don't care about this topic. And I think they need to start caring. And once they start caring, which goes with hand in hand with what Jin said, which is looking at return of investment, cost efficiencies, and also understanding how digital is the way to go when you think of awareness and performance, then you will see more dollars into digital and transparency becoming a key element of every conversation between all players in the ecosystem. But I do feel like it starts with marketers, and it starts with marketing and branding teams having someone, a specialist, and asking the right questions from their agencies, and then everyone else will see this becoming the norm.
So you agree with that, Hemant? You confirm?
I actually do. So I'll go back to my point, right? Like if the dollar flow, the origin of the dollar happens from the marketer, right? If that, you know, like that end of, you know, the entire chain is controlled or is, you know, doing things or following practices that are really robust, right? It just kind of has a trickle down effect across what happens in the supply chain as well, right? But of course, even at the buyer's end or at a marketer's end, there are a lot of elements, right? So you have the DSP in the picture, you have the publisher, because, you know, these guys have like relationships across, right? So they need to ensure that they have the expertise, so the talent, the right talent sitting there and actually, you know, and this is what, you know, I've faced across, you know, the markets that I've worked with. You know, the talent there is quite good with the platforms, but when it comes to understanding of how, you know, the data is actually being fetched into those platforms, that's quite limited. And because of that, it just throws off all the frameworks that they might do, all these big things that they might do, right? Frameworks, practices, protocols, you know, these are the terms that marketers use, right? If the talent is not, you know, doing the right thing, essentially it just throws off everything. That's what I feel. But yeah, and I echo Diogo's point around, you know, APAC being like a very, you know, varied, having very varied nuances. So Australia definitely, you know, probably is at a stage where they are able to do a lot of things that other markets are still trying, you know, probably in the day-to-day. In the ASEAN markets specifically, ASEAN markets are still growing, right? I mean, even from a consumer standpoint, even from digital penetration standpoint, they're still growing. So till the time, I feel, this is my point of view, that till the time that growth is there, I don't think, you know, transparency will ever be achieved, you know, to the fullest, because there are so many nuances at play. It's, you know, it's not very easy to navigate every nuance, you know, at the fullest.
Yeah, true. So I was wondering, like, yeah, talking about Australia or these tier 1 countries, for example, publishers, they are like way bigger. So they have teams, they have like sales teams, and so they manage to have direct relationship also with the buyers. So another question, like, do you think open auction, for example, can be used for transparency? I mean, like, until publishers here, for example, in Southeast Asia, they still have not the sales team to have direct relationship with the buyers. And so they are just using open auction with a lot of SSPs, like what we could have seen in the US like 5 years ago, you know, like they had like 25 SSPs in the order bidding. In this way, could we be transparent, for example?
Sorry, is that a question for me?
Yeah, this is a question. Like, what do you think? Like, using open auction as a unique channel to sell your inventory, or to the other way, if you use open auction, only open auction, can you be transparent? How do you do to be transparent on this?
Can I be very honest? Yes.
Yeah.
Open exchange. This is again, this is from my experience. Open exchange gives you more control as a buyer. So there are a lot of these stereotypes that make circles in the buying space, right? Like specifically in the buyers ecosystem, that open exchange gives out remnant inventory, or there's only remnant inventory. And probably if I know that this is a conversation that we were having 5 years back, probably, but even today, a lot of these markets are still in that thought flow, right? That through open exchange, that I will only get inventory that is not sold. Honestly, that is not true, right? Because a lot of publishers are not looking at their ad stack in a ad tech stack in a waterfall model anymore. They're actually prioritizing supply basis whatever makes money for them. So given that is happening, even buyers are trying to even buyers need to kind of tap into the potential that open exchange gives them, like specifically the control. There's more, so there are solutions that, Double Verify has come up with. It's called IQPA. Essentially what it does is it tells you if whether in the open exchange environment, whether your bid domain versus placement domain was the same or not. So a lot of these solutions can really help you to, control what you're buying. And essentially that control can lead to transparency. I know that there are a lot of other nuances like ads.txt, which of course is, it's a standard that was implemented, probably 5 years back, but today we know that ads.txt is also open, open for grabs with respect to ad fraudsters and all that. So yeah, I feel definitely open exchange is definitely a, way to control or be more transparent.
Yeah, I would add as a publisher, I agree with that, even if in my current role, we don't really do much in the open exchange. I think open exchange is what true programmatic is, to start with. That's exactly how you get scale, how you do audience buying in a scalable model. I think if it's impossible to have transparency in that, then you're killing programmatic. So I definitely it's possible. From a publisher point of view, knowing you, Kevin, as well as an SSP, obviously there's rules you can set up at an SSP level as well to control how your inventory is traded in the open exchange as well, and what kind of advertisers can actually access your inventory, and floor rates to ensure that you're not actually selling that inventory at a really low rate. So I do think that open exchange is definitely a reality, and thankfully, I think what we need more in APAC or in the Southeast Asia, at least markets, or ASEAN, as Hemant was saying, is a better mix of all buying models. So actual and understanding, a better framework to understand how the different buying models can help clients. But I think open exchange will stay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like stock trading, right? I mean, it's essentially the evolution of the entire trading ecosystem will move towards biddable media, right? It could be PMPs or private marketplaces or open exchange, right? Like that's the future, because for publishers, it means that they'll make more money and they'll make more margins on the same inventory that they were probably selling at a fixed price. Versus for buyers, it means that they will bring in more efficiencies on their dollar. So I mean, that fluidity is, I feel it's the future of trading, especially in the programmatic.
Yeah. So I totally agree with both of you. My question was more about, like, by using open auction, you don't have this direct pass directly from the publisher to the buyer, or to the buyer from the buyer to the publisher. And you can have this inventory be resold by 2 or 3 networks before you buy it, without adding any value, and so just adding fees. That was more about this. Like, I mean, with open auction, the risk that you can have is, like, you don't have the direct pass. With it, you can lose the transparency. And that was more my question about, like, what do you think about it? So are you on the buy side? Do you have the tools so you can avoid it? So we know, for example, some of agencies are using SPO, but I think that by using SPO, then you are, as you said, losing the advantage of open auction, for example. I mean, like by limiting the number of supply. So what do we do about it? How can we mix open auction with true transparency? How does it work?
It's measurement, right? So, I mean, if you have a particular measurement infrastructure in place, yeah, so it could be a combination of ad servers, your verification tools like IAS, Double Verify, all these players, right? So even they are coming up with, SPO is one, but they're also coming up with a lot of ways in which buyers can get visibility into what happens in the supply chain that they're buying. Now, using that and using a lot of DSPs also report on ads.txt, for example, right? So they allow you to control inventory only that is being routed via direct sellers and not resellers. So you can use a lot of these specificities of, at an execution level to really control your media buys. So it doesn't mean that you have to restrict yourself to a certain publisher. But in the open exchange, given the plethora of websites that are available or applications that are available, we can really go towards whatever our objective is and buy accordingly. So we don't have to restrict ourselves. That's the beauty of it. Yeah.
That's great to hear. It's like even if the open auction looks like the Far West, actually it's not, and we can control it, and we know what's happening.
Yeah.
Can I add
Just
one
to
thing?
add to that, I think.
I'm sorry. Go for it, June. We always speak at the same time.
Super quick, just to add to what Hemant was saying, you do have all those controls, in many of the DSPs, and ads.txt, great call out, and it doesn't even have to go to that level, right? Like there are tools to protect yourself against domain spoofing, or above the fold, below the fold. That's one of the basic filters, right? All these filters are available within your trading platforms oftentimes, where when if you're using open exchanges, there are a bigger pool of inventory, so you have a scale even if you're adding more filters, and because you have those filters, you basically weed out anyone who doesn't add much value. Go, Diogo. Sorry.
No, I should be sorry. No, I would just add to both what you guys said, which I totally agree with. Again, what I mentioned before, which I will hammer that point, which it starts with clients and brands asking questions. I think if they don't ask the right questions, even to your point, Kevin, a lot of middle companies that take and buy inventory and just put a fee on top, and maybe they're not adding a lot of value. Again, I think that only comes with advertisers starting to ask questions to their DSP or their agency partners and saying, how is this working? How are you prioritizing transparency here? And also investing in it, because back to what Hemant is saying, it's lovely to use measurement and it's lovely to use all these tools in the DSPs, but they cost money and a lot of brands are not ready to pay for it. And again, it starts with that. Like, I think the advertisers and the brands need to be ready, have the right talent to make these calls, to go to their agency saying, yes, sure, do that. I want to know what I'm buying. I want to buy above the fold. I want to use ads.txt, it's all these things have to come from the advertiser. They need to be ready to make these calls and question some of the things that are happening in their buying infrastructure or framework, as Hemant mentioned. I think that is, in my opinion, where everything will start to shift in our region.
Okay, great. Actually, we still have 10 minutes, and I still have a lot of topics I want to talk about. So I will let you choose about it. Okay. So I have a big question, which will be like, can the walled garden be transparent? We could also talk about the first-party data and first-party ID, which is a nice topic, and I think this is part also about transparency. We could also better conclude about why APAC should be transparent and act to it. I think we already talked about it, so it's pretty clear. Or maybe you also have other ideas about what is transparency, why we should be all transparent here. Let me know. Who want to pick something?
Can I suggest the APAC one, and then maybe talk a little bit more about the publishers as well? Because I agree with advertisers having to be sophisticated, but it also requires publishers to be aware of what they can actually share, because I think oftentimes they don't even know that they could share some of the data points through SSPs, and that would increase their chance of being visible to the advertisers.
Okay, so the question will be like, as we know that in the APAC markets, the walled gardens are really dominant, both on the supply side and on the buy side. Do you think that APAC can be transparent? And how do you think APAC should move to a transparent way, knowing this fact about the walled garden? Who want to answer this?
I can go first. That's okay.
Yeah,
okay.
go ahead.
I agree to the reality being that APAC is a walled garden dominant market in general. Like Diogo said, right? Probably we can't define APAC, but in general, wherever I've kind of worked across APAC, I've seen that a lot of these walled gardens are dominating, both the supply and the demand side. With respect to the walled gardens being transparent, yes, they can be transparent. Definitely, they have the potential to. Are they transparent today? Probably they have to make a lot of efforts to actually get there. That's my, and I've been in rooms with the publishers where publishers have actually questioned what was the CPM that their inventory was being sold at, right? Because that is something that they don't get visibility into. Now, similarly on the buy side, right? A lot of these big brands, right, without going into any names, a lot of big FMCG brands are actually now adopting independent Adtech players. The reason primarily for that is that they want to create sustainable practices across the ecosystem. I mean, that's the narrative that they run with. And I also kind of believe that, right, that if you have independent Adtech players, they will definitely not prioritize a particular publisher over the other, right? And therefore not influence your ad placement as a buyer, but also not influence, a publisher's existence. So what I mean by that is that, let's say, you're a walled garden operating in a market like India, right? Now, I worked in India and, this is something I realized that there were a lot of these small scale publishers that probably didn't have the capacity to own, their own sales teams. And they were probably reliant on only, these walled gardens to monetize their inventory, right? Now, in such a scenario, of course, the small scale publisher will never get priority, right? Because they will never bring in the scale that will probably make margins for walled gardens. And in the algorithm, what happens is that they start prioritizing the publishers that are actually making money for them. So even though the consumers are going to, these small scale publishers, my ads don't get placed there. So as an advertiser or as a buyer, I get, I don't have the opportunity to tap into that particular audience. So that is one. Second is, for the publisher, it means that, of course, over a period of time, it just kills its existence. So I feel it's really important that, like moving forward, that walled gardens are really transparent, because essentially it poses a, threat to the entire ecosystem. That's what I feel.
Yeah, but so what if today I'm a publisher and I'm using a walled garden and I want to be transparent in order to please my my buyers? What should I do?
Probably the first thing you do is start prioritizing, I'll say, fair practices, over, money. So I know that everybody is in, a business, and I understand that fact. But I think if you're not fair, in our practices, essentially the ecosystem will just be, monopolized or duopolized. It doesn't make sense, right? Even it kills the agility for advertisers as well. So, speaking from that lens, I think even advertisers need to understand, that they will kill innovation if they're only prioritizing a particular, platform over the other.
So you mean it's more like the fight between short term and mid and long term? I mean, like on the short term, you have the revenue, so you're happy, you can live and everything. But in the mid long term, then it's not sustainable, and so you should like move forward about it to think about the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's you can't ignore them, right? Like that's the reality today. You can't ignore them. As an agency, also we can't ignore them. But that doesn't mean that we kind of not work with other independent Adtech players.
Got it. What is your thoughts, June, Diogo, about it?
Even for publishers, I think a lot of APAC publishers or, app developers still think that the less they share, the more they're going to be able to take away because of, the control over margin. And that's actually what, and I can speak to North America because, that was a market that I used to work in. A lot of publishers initially believe that, but look what's happening now. They're working, towards transparency. They're all on programmatic, they're all working with independent ad tech partners. And, now also, if they are sharing more information, let's say, from a DSP or any brand advertisers, if you're seeing our desired audience on two different platforms, one shares a lot more information about them and the other one doesn't, then we're always going to go with the one that we know who we are buying. So that's, really the reason why transparency is important, because that gives the transparent publisher who's willing to share information with us more chances to be visible to the buyers, and again, more chances to get more revenue from the buyers, because that's, where the money is coming from.
Yeah, I like what you guys are saying. I think I like the question, Kevin, and I think it's very hard to answer. But publishers, Emin touched upon the most important part here. I think publishers are looking to make the most revenue they can. I don't think a publisher is necessarily, and similar to buyers, is, again, all of us said that it's all about return of investment, and to invest in transparency and to create a transparency model. But it takes time. It takes time, it takes effort, and probably investment to get to that level where your ROI actually becomes significant. And I think for publishers, it's the same journey. I've worked in small publishers, I've worked in large publishers, and kind of the question is all the same. Like you have quarter targets to hit or yearly targets, and that's what you're aiming at as an organization. And again, everyone has to understand very well what implications it will have to work or not to work with walled gardens. And the truth is, the cost of working with walled gardens and the return is currently probably quite appealing in Southeast Asia or in APAC. And that's the reason why it hasn't yet shifted, as June was saying, like in North America or maybe in Europe, where really publishers have realized, wait, my data is not being monetized properly. The buyers are actually not seeing what I'm sending them. I don't have a conversation now with the buyer, so I have no idea how to even grow this account or convey my message to this account. So I think those things will happen slowly, but I think it's a value conversation. It's what is your short-term objective? What is your long-term objective? And find something in the middle. But sooner or later, again, because of pressures of the advertisers, pressures of the agencies, DSPs, and then the SSPs are working in that framework, publishers will just come to that conclusion.
Yeah, actually, we just need to have good use cases on showing them, like, by being transparent, you will see, like, you will have more money as a publisher, you will have better performances as a buyer. And in the middle, we are playing the game, so it should work. Just to be clear also, June, you were saying that some publishers are still not willing to share some data. I mean, like, not to share everything. What do you mean by, what are this information? I mean, like, today, they are all with as.txt, they are all passing the transparent URL. So what are you expecting as more information from publishers? Just to be clear about it.
Ads.txt adoption rate in APAC is not, not very high, first of all. And globally, it's not 100%, right? So I think that's something that we can work towards. But APAC overall, from what I've seen today, publishers want to have, exclusivity, and which kind of creates like fragmentation. They don't sometimes want to share which subdomains where the ads appeared on. Maybe even additional signals that they can pass on through SSPs, but they're not, because they don't feel comfortable. And maybe it's because, you know, they don't want to lose that control. But if you think about it, with independent partners, they probably have more control over their data and their revenue because, you know, with wall gardens, they're called wall gardens for a reason. Data goes in and, you know, everything gets owned by wall gardens, nothing comes out. You know, there's little that you can come out, and that's certainly the case for the buyers, and I'm guessing that's the, you know, the case for the publishers as well. So, you know, for publishers, how do you get more exposure to the buyers? You know, how do you get that visibility, which, you know, to them should mean control over what they have, should be a concern, and that should be the long-term goal. But,
Okay.
you know, in APAC, unfortunately, I think we're, maybe because there are a lot of developers that are starting, especially I think in the last year or so, during pandemic, there are more app developers that are trying to go, you know, reach beyond their borders, and they're not yet familiar with the trends outside of APAC. And so they're kind of starting with what they know. You know, exclusive, just going direct and, you know, trying to sell IO basis, you know, sales, and that kind of creates even more fragmentation.
Okay, that will be the conclusion because we are out of time. Can I just ask, like, for each of you, if each of you actually, just like a last sentence, a takeaway before we all quit this discussion? Diogo, want to start?
Sure thing. I'm going to say a lot of the same, but there's two things that came out for me actually speaking to or listening to everyone. Is one, that transparency is something that everyone has to be on board. So not just an individual, be it publisher, be it SSP, DSP, or agency. I think everyone has to be on the same page for it to work properly. And I think the second one is we all have to wear our hats and educate internally in our organizations, but also with the partners we speak with, of what the value is of transparency. Again, we all spoke about return of ad spends, return of investment, and the value of actually doing the right thing, I would say, within the ecosystem. So I think we need to be the ones conveying that message, and whoever is listening to our conversation should also do the same in their own organization and with their partners, because that's the only way we're going to get there.
True. Hemant?
Yeah, I'll probably echo Diogo's thoughts. I think the key takeaway for me also was that we have to work towards this collectively. It's not an individual effort. It's not one element of the ecosystem, you know, like pushing for one thing and then the others are just sleeping. It's something that, you know, we need to move towards collectively. And I think the second one is that APAC is still growing. I think the reality today is that, you know, even though we want to do that, we are still, you know, kind of driven by short-term objectives. And therefore, you know, we kind of also, you know, follow that practices that we do in accordance to that. So it's a long way to go. And honestly, I'm just excited to work towards that. Yeah.
Yeah, June?
Have to echo everybody, just kidding. Yes, we have to all work together to, you know, achieve transparency. And maybe that starts with asking questions to your partners. Hey, what am I buying? You know, even if you don't know what ads.txt is, or, you know, what kind of fees you're being charged, just ask your partners, where is my investment going? What are the sites that we're displayed on? How are you measuring frauds? How are you ensuring, you know, quality? And getting that dimension to your investment is probably a good way to start. And if you're not asking those questions, whether you're a publisher or buyer, if you're continuing with the non-transparent model and encouraging more of the arbitrage models to flourish, that is leaving room for bad actors to continue with their business, right? And we're always going to be here. So being transparent will actually propel all of us to move forward, and, you know, that, you know, really put us on the same page, grow as an industry together.
Yeah, good. Kind of the same than you. I believe like transparency is the present, but also the future, and that everybody has to go into it. Shouldn't be scared about being the only one be transparent. Of course, at the beginning, if you want to be transparent, you will be the only one. Short term can be scared, but I don't think this will be a problem. So we need to move forward, each of us trying to be more and more transparent. You don't have to be fully transparent tomorrow. I mean, like this is step by step that you will be. And at the end, everybody will win. I mean, like from the publisher to the Adtech partners, to the agency and advertisers. By everybody being transparent, we'll all will overachieve, I would say, our KPIs. Because yeah, transparency is a key. Okay, thank you very much, guys. So if anyone who was listening want to talk about transparency, you can contact us. So we have Diogo from Spotify, Hemant from denstu, June from MediaMath, and myself, Kevin from Smart Ad Server. And we are all excited about transparency, as you can see. And so we will be happy to talk about it later. Thank you very much, guys, for your time. That was really interesting, this conversation. And see you later. I mean, like in a transparent way. So the plane will go down. Okay. Be careful by going out of the plane. See you.
No in-flight service.
I hope you enjoy your flight. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.